Hi, welcome to a new season of Star. This is Terry White for Star Cottons. Imagine my excitement when Star Cottons asked me to design 24 new multicolors in their new re-engineered Star Cottons. It was so wonderful. A lot of my inspiration came from my garden and also from the current colors and hand-dyed fabrics that are on the market. These are 100% premium extra long staple mercerized Egyptian Giza cotton. They're 30 weight and 3 ply. They're very strong and make beautiful stitches, and they're wonderful for long arm machine quilting. And there's really good value here because there's 1,200 yards on a tube. The decorative panel that you see here is called Loose Leaf Notebook, and it's going to cover a loose leaf notebook. When I get new threads, one of the things I like to do is thread paint with them and also do decorative stitching with them to see what the qualities are. So I've started with these beautiful suede cloths by Cherrywood Fabrics. They're a wonderful ground to work with, and cut them out in a pattern and do the decorative stitching, and then do some thread painting, cut those pieces out, loose leaves, and then adhere them, and then make the final project. The final project, you'll find those instructions on the Star website. We're going to start the project with this pattern, and we're going to cut the pattern apart, piece like that. And then I take the fabric and I starch it and iron it. And then I put the piece of paper down and I simply trace around this. And then I want to cut it out with some really sharp scissors. So I have my piece. Okay, then here are all the other pieces that I've cut out. So this is the fusible interfacing. I'm going to lay this down first, and then put out my cut pieces of fabric, lay them next to each other, and fuse them. And so this fusible interfacing not only keeps the pieces in place, but it also stabilizes when I go to do my stitching. The presser foot is riding along the intersection of the two fabrics. The nice thing about not piecing these fabrics ahead of time and just laying them down and fusing them is that the stitch will stitch the two pieces together and stitch it to the stabilizer at the same time, and you don't have all that patchwork bulk. Now, our decorative stitches on our sewing machine were programmed for a 30 weight thread, so you're going to get the best decorative stitches with this thicker thread. Thread delivery is very important too. I am pulling the thread from the side of the spool, and I have the top thread tension on the lowest setting, and the spool itself causes enough tension so that I get a pretty stitch, but it's not so tight that it embeds in the fabric. Now, I know that you have got a lot of beautiful stitches on your sewing machine that you haven't even tried yet, and this is the perfect place to try brand new stitches. Okay, so I have traced my design on my fabric and hooped it with some medium weight stabilizer, and I'm thread painting. You can see all of that information on the previous video on the Star website, Sunny Beach Bag. So what I'm showing you here is what this multicolor thread is doing. It has a long color change, and it's random, so I really don't know when it's going to change. But to get really interesting color groupings, I'll stitch in a small area for a little while with one color till it changes color, and then I can move it over to another spot. It's sort of like a game. So here it's changed to the red and back to the yellow. See, it's random, so you really don't know. Oh good, I have a bunch of red. Oh, turn into green. So you get a very interesting look with just one thread. So I finished the multicolor inside of the leaf, and I've switched to this wine tasting. That's the name of this thread. So it's a variety of rich reds, including a dark one. Now you can see that the direction of the stitches is really important. It's as important as the colors of the thread, so that you get a flowing, lively looking design. So what I'll do is break up the area that I'm stitching like this, so that I can keep that nice and flowing, and I'm not worried about a real long line of stitching. And that also sort of breaks up the colors so that you don't get long striations of color, but you get concentrated areas of color. Now I'm stitching the center veins of each leaflet with this solid dark green thread. Choosing a solid here because the threads on either side have so much color change that you may not be able to tell the difference between the stem part and this part if this was also changing color. You can allow some of the color to show through. That's one of the fun things about stitching on colored fabrics, is that you can allow some of the color to show through, and it gives a continuity to all of the colors. Now I want you to notice too that as I'm stitching, as I'm going from one spot to the next, I'm traveling along and outlining the star that's the center of each of these leaves. So now I'm stitching the inside of the star with this rosy pink. You can see how I'm stitching straight in from each point of the star, and so it does some real interesting things in the center. After I've stitched all of my leaf parts, I will use fusible web, like this, fusible web, and iron it on the back, and then I will take it off. Okay, so then I have all these little pieces with this fusible web. So I take it off and I will cut it out, and you have to use really, really sharp scissors. So I use these little tiny sharp curved scissors, and I stitch pretty close to the stitching. And then I'll place them wherever I want to on my panel and fuse. Those are loose leaves and they're fused down, and then no stitching. Okay, so to make the little bookmark, I start out the same way. There's my little piece, and it's got the fusible interfacing, and I will iron it to a backing and then cut that out. Okay. So I have that backing on here, then cut it out. And then I just took some embroidery floss and took another piece of fabric that I had the fusible on and ironed that on. So that irons these pieces of embroidery floss to the back, and then I just tie a little button on the end of it. So I have my loose leaf bookmark. I hope you've enjoyed the loose leaf notebook, and this is Terry White for Star Cottons. Thank you for joining me.